Namaste. Welcome back to this lecture course series on yoga for memory development. This is the week 8 of the module 16, and in this today's whole lecture series I am going to cover research on yoga for memory development. We have several studies. I am going to give you a summary of scientific evidence which are split in two parts. In the first part I am going to talk about scientific studies relevant to healthy individuals, while in the second part we are going to see how yoga can help improving memory in individuals where there are deficits or in clinical conditions. As learning objectives, we have looked at what memory is and various types of memory. Today's session I am going to cover various scientific studies on yoga for memory enhancement. Hence that becomes one of the important learning objective, which includes yoga for memory enhancement, various yoga techniques including yoga breathing, yoga based kriya, yoga based meditation technique, all of them together or in isolation or separately, how they can influence various processes of memory, and details related to how yoga improves memory, including the underlying mechanisms, and finally looking at overall summary of yoga practices needed for improving for memory enhancement. Let us go back to the recap of what we have already understood about memory. As you know, sage Patanjali defined yoga and its relevance in improving memory, particularly bringing the definition of memory as Anubhuta Vishaya Asampramoshaha Smrutihi. Smruti is the word which is used for memory in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So that which facilitates an individual to recollect that information whichever has been stored over a period of time effectively is called as memory. So memory is a process which involves information encoding, storage and retrieval. So there are these three terminologies you keep on hearing: encoding, storage and retrieval, because if your memory has to be very effective, you need to receive information and you have to code that information to store it in a place and bring that information back to your use whenever it is needed. Hence, it is a set of mental processes which includes a series or chain of activities. So, starts from receiving that information from the five sensory organs. It can be what I see, what I hear, what I feel with respect to my touch sensation, what I smell and what I taste. Each information, every second, whatever gets into my brain is stored, and it all depends on how well I receive this information to begin with, and then how do I code it, where this information has to be stored and how effectively I can store it, because as we have seen under various types of memories, some information which comes, I use it and that disappears, which remains in short-term memory, whereas all other information which I use again and again gets into long-term memory. And also important is organizing various dimensions on various aspects of memory, where exactly you store, how you store and how you use it subsequently, like how you can alter. For example, there is an input coming from your brain for any information coming from external sources saying that I know this information. So now in the retrieval process you have two inputs, one coming as a response to whatever it has seen and second one telling based on the prior experience. So lots of things which guides us in using various information stored in our brain. Memory is an internal record or representation of some prior event or experience. As we all know, whatever we see, whatever we experience, it's all stored somewhere, and how best I bring it out and whenever it is needed is all that which matters. So we have gone through various types of memory because it's important to understand how yoga can have an impact on not just in general about its impact on memory, but also on various dimensions of memory, various types of memory. So memory broadly can be classified into three: short-term memory, long-term memory, and sensory memory. So we also bring this component of impression of sensory stimuli, which is stored, even that impression of the sensory stimuli, which is classified under the sensory memory, while short-term memory reflects the working memory. For example, I am receiving some information and I am acting on it then and there. So what I use is a lot of that information under short-term memory, while long-term memory is that which I store. As I said, the processes, like there's a cascade of events which takes place when I am utilizing various indices of memory. So in long-term memory, basically all these processes are involved, and finally how well I store this information. So my childhood experiences can be remembered very well even in my old age. So similarly, whatever I had good or bad experiences in my workplace can be reflected positively or negatively in another job when I go. So the impact of long-term memory can be utilized significantly. Under sensory memory, once again you have two major categories. One is visual memory, another is auditory memory. Visual memory called iconic memory, while auditory memory echoic memory. Along with that, when you are looking at sensory memory and long-term memory, the most important part which we all need and we give a lot of importance is that various classifications under long-term memory, which are declarative memory, and that which reflects various aspects including the factual information. So specific facts, whatever I come across in my life, those are remembered, and whenever I make a judgment, these facts are going to help me in making a right or wrong decision. So similarly, under declarative memory, I have semantic memory and episodic memory to mention here, because these two play extraordinary role in actually shaping all our activities. Because in semantic memory, what we are looking at is basically all that knowledge coming from the world. So whether I see some natural thing, be it a tree, be it a river, be it a mountain, anything for that matter in nature, or you go to a city, you are going through a specific place, and once you have gone through that place, once again after 10 years you go to the same place, you remember that, yeah, I had been to this place, and all that information, whether it has come from a specific object or specific experience, all that is stored under semantic memory, while episodic memory is something which deals with personal experience of an individual. So this gets all that information which is a recollection of an individual's personal experience. I had one very good experience, then I feel that I have to go to that place again and again because I can probably repeat that good experience. Or I avoid going to few places because I had a bad experience. I avoid meeting few people because I had a bad experience. So all these can be classified and kept under episodic memory. What we also look at is how well we can understand the impact of yoga on various dimensions of memory we have seen just now. So there are several scientific studies which have been conducted in looking at how combination of yoga practices can influence memory in general, and how individual yoga practices, be it a breathing practice or technique which requires an individual to focus attention, like in Trataka, which is a Kriya, and a meditation practice. We have several types of meditations, but in general, most of these meditation techniques have been shown to have similar influence on an individual's memory. So we are going to look at all these studies in detail. When we talk of scientific studies on yoga, looking at improvement in memory or its influence on memory, what we remember is not just few practices which are commonly seen, because we look at yoga as a lifestyle. We bring various dimensions of yoga which can probably enhance an individual's performance involving memory. One such early study which I want to start with is where individuals were asked to wake up early in the morning. We have a tendency, my grandmother used to tell me that if you want to remember any of that information you study in school, better you wake up early in the morning. So we always used to find it difficult to get up, but when you get up early in the morning and you study, you remember it for longer duration. So is it just an anecdotal experience, what people used to say, or grandmother's tale? No, it has been scientifically demonstrated. When school children, when they were divided into two groups, when they were asked to, one group was asked to wake up early in the morning. There is a special time called Brahma Muhurta, which is defined as part of yogic lifestyle, where you wake up during that time and then finish your basic natural nature's calls. Then you freshen up yourself and sit and study or do any activity. Your performance can be excellent. Children, when woke up early in the morning and they did certain practices and then they have participated in their studies, their academic performance improved and their ability to recall in a memory task certainly improved. If I start waking up early in the morning, initially the stress component of waking up early in the morning can have some impact on the performance, but once you make it as a habit, not too long than a week's time, then your performance can improve significantly. So moreover, when children followed yoga-based program, it was shown to enhance their self-efficacy and visual motor integration, their planning abilities, and also processing speed with fine motor coordination. Because one is looking at only memory as interest for us for research. Second one, looking at various factors which can influence your memory. So in the first one, we looked at waking up early as an intervention, but also as part of a factor which can influence memory. Whereas in the second part, we are looking at memory along with various other dimensions of sensory and motor activities, including higher brain functions, can be improved though your target memory has something to be enhanced. We have a series of studies conducted on looking at how we can study specific hemisphere function, because we know very clearly that memory is coded, memory is actually represented well in various areas of the brain. So there is right hemisphere and there is left hemisphere, and we know that some parts of some specific aspects of memory are regulated by right hemisphere while the others are regulated by left hemisphere. So in a study where we looked at verbal and spatial memory, as we know, verbal memory is somewhere connected with your logical brain, which is your left hemisphere. Spatial memory is connected with your artistic brain, which is your right hemisphere. What we wanted to look at is practicing yoga is going to have an influence on any one specific hemisphere, or it's going to bring a balancing effect. So in this interesting study, it showed that when school children given yoga practice for 10 long days, it showed that they can improve their spatial memory as high as 43%. So this included, once again, as I said, combination of yoga practices. It included some postures, breathing, meditation, guided relaxation, etc. Important aspect in this study was like a delayed recall test was used. Like imagine I tell 5 words to you and I ask you to repeat, then you can repeat much easily. Next, what I do to introduce a delayed recall test, I am going to show you 10 different words, and then I am going to give you a small arithmetic sum to solve. So now when you are solving the arithmetic sum, the memory of those 10 words, whatever were shown earlier, should be remembered strongly, so that with this interference with another task, you don't forget it. So this delayed recall task is very important, which suggests that with kind of a disturbance and distraction, we can optimize our memory function if we practice yoga. So similarly, apart from doing multiple yoga practices, there is also a special interest in individuals looking at breathing through a particular nostril, because in pranayama we talk about either you can do a practice using right nostril, left nostril, alternate nostril, or you can use even your mouth for doing pranayama practices. In this particular study, breathing through a particular nostril, namely as I mentioned, either right, left or alternate nostril, compared with the breath awareness group, were tested using the similar task what I mentioned in the previous study, like verbal and spatial memory, assessed in school children, given these practices along with yoga, general yoga, for 10 long days. Interestingly, all the groups showed improvement in spatial memory tasks, but the group which practiced pranayama had better improvement, up to 84% compared to a breath awareness group. So this gives us an indication that yes, either one practice or multiple practices can be given to enhance memory. So this subsequent study also looked at a similar intervention, like effect of left, right and alternate nostril breathing. So in this study, what was looked at as interest or the special objective is female subjects only, because we know that at times the response from male subjects versus female subjects can be differential, and we know that the right hemispheric functioning is also much advanced in female who actually participate in such activities compared to males. So in this study, when female subjects aged between 18 to 25 were given yoga practices, and they were divided into 3 groups. One group given right nostril, another left nostril, the third group alternate nostril breathing for 1 week period, and the whole thing was given as 45 minutes daily. It showed a significant improvement in another task which demands them to reproduce whatever has been given to them. So there is something called digit span forward and digit span backward. So I tell few digits and you have to repeat them after I complete it. Whereas in digit span backward, when I tell 1, 2, 3, you are supposed to say 3, 2, 1. So it actually increases when I add more numbers to it with respect to complexity. Imagine if I say 1, you repeat 1, 2, you repeat 2, 5, you repeat 5. Then I say 1 and 3, you say 1 and 3. Subsequently when I say 1, 5, 6, 8, 3, so then you are supposed to reproduce the same thing. And similarly, when I say in ascending order, you are expected to say the same in a descending order. So this brings in a lot of complexity in remembering and reproducing, and the impact of this uninostril breathing was tested in these individuals, which demonstrated that when you do either of these breathing practices, it shows significant impact on your performance requiring memory, particularly digit span. We are also interested in looking at higher cognitive processes along with specific aspects of memory. In another study where children who were all students studying in school, where they were identified with low academic performance, and the impact of yoga was tested on these individuals. We also know that when you know yourself, your academic performance is low, that brings in a sub-level of anxiety in individuals. So that actually is known to impact their cognitive performance subsequently during examinations. So for this study, 89 female students were chosen, and these students were divided into 2 groups, and one group was given yoga while the other was given physical exercise, and series of tests and multiple components of tests which involve memory and attention and cognitive processes were tested in these individuals. We asked this question like, okay, I use one assessment tool, the impact of it will remain for some time. And in research we also asked this question, okay, for testing purpose, imagine I use around 10-15 tests. Whether doing a test itself is going to produce an anxiety in individuals, or the fatigue effect related to a test is going to have an impact or not, is also tested. Because we had couple of them looking at attention span. Some of them are looking at your ability to shift your attention, while the others were looking at puristic component of memory, while authors also have looked at state right anxiety in these children. The results were very interesting to suggest that when you practice yoga for a longer duration, probably it can bring in changes not just in one component of your functioning, but parallelly the same technique can influence various other components. Like what we have seen in this study, yoga can improve general intelligence, visuospatial working memory, attention, as well as reducing anxiety in students with low academic performance. So having said that academic performance is very important and which demands an individual to have better attention, concentration and ability to reproduce, we also looked at how various dimensions of memory and aspects of memory can influence performance requiring a motor task. So there's one study where we looked at static motor performance following yoga training in school children. Good attention span and memory helps to reduce errors and improve accuracy in a performance requiring motor activity. So two groups with 45 children were tested aged between 9 to 13 years. One group receiving yoga training which included combination of practices as I mentioned earlier, like postures, then pranayama, then some relaxation and specific focusing tasks like Trataka. And after 10 days there was a significant improvement in the accuracy in this particular task. What exactly happened is you have to hold a particular stylus without moving, and if you move it, it's going to touch the sides of it, which is recorded as an error. So we go in a complexity like a bigger hole to a smaller hole. So when you are holding the stylus in a bigger hole, there are less chances that you touch to the sides and the errors are documented. While when you go to the smallest hole, there are more possibilities that you touch to the sides and the errors increases. So yoga also improves your muscle memory. So that's what we are looking at here. Like your muscles, the small muscles can tell you that I can shake only this much, beyond which it is recorded as an error. So it holds your hand very steadily. So these kind of tasks are also important to understand other dimensions of memory. We have looked at other factors which can influence your memory as well. So there are studies which documented enhancing executive function, looking at couple of tasks requiring memory while other tasks requiring balance and attention. So this particular study also looked at various dimensions like how yoga training can facilitate attention to postural control during yogasanas, and how respiratory control can be established through pranayama based breathing techniques, and how you can regulate your mental disturbances through relaxation and meditation was tested in this, and it demonstrated that when you practice yoga, it can actually enhance various dimensions, not only improving memory but also it can inhibit those disturbing inputs coming into your brain probably. Hence it is said that attention to memory and respiratory control during yoga might be definitely considered as a potential mechanism through which specific components of executive control in young adults might be enhanced potentially by altering various aspects as measured in this study, the speed and accuracy. So as I was mentioning, it is also important to bring a few other dimensions or factors which can influence memory. One aspect which we consider and talk about extensively is stress. So we all know it very well. We tell children also, we use it for our own purpose, that when you have to perform something, don't be stressed, don't be anxious. Children we tell, no, when you are studying now, you just focus and study this subject. Don't have the stress that I have to perform like this, I have to get 95%, I have to get 98%. All that is not needed. In fact, those are going to create stress to individuals. So there are lots of studies talking about how stress can impact an individual's memory, and here we have looked at some of those studies which demonstrated reducing stress and its impact on memory using yoga as an intervention. There is one technique which is studied here, recent study, where slow yoga breathing, where we bring the breath rate to 6 breaths per minute, and then we look at its impact on various dimensions, This particular study, they looked at working memory and on heart rate variability. Heart rate variability gives us an indication that whether you are getting more stressed or more relaxed. So combining both these, we can understand the whole mechanism better, that yes, practicing yoga, practicing slow yoga breathing, and individuals' stress levels reduced, the sympathetic activity reduced, the parasympathetic activity increased. At the same time, memory, the performance in a memory task, working memory task also improved, giving an indication that probably yoga works through a mechanism of reducing stress. So in this study, around 40 healthy male volunteers, when they were tested on a working memory task, which is an NBAC task, when they were given alternate nostril breathing, right nostril breathing compared to breath awareness, and their breath rate was kept at 6 breaths per minute, it demonstrated that there was a significant reduction in reaction time, what was measured in an NBAC task for a 2-back condition, and also there was an improvement in accuracy in a 0-back condition after right nostril breathing. And all these studies are somewhere giving us a clue that you can combine various dimensions of yoga to get probably much better results than using one single technique, which what we have seen here. So if you really want to understand how these individual techniques have influenced various dimensions of memory, including cognitive functions, we have a series of studies. Along with that, what is important is to understand a little bit of a mechanism, like breathing, its role in modulating cortical neural activity. So one study where an attempt was made, like 20 healthy individuals who are naive yoga practitioners who were given this particular unilateral left nostril breathing, Chandra Anuloma Viloma Pranayama, or the authors called it as Chandra Anga Pranayama in this study, for 15 minutes, demonstrated that it can actually decrease the response time in Sternberg memory task. So this gives us lots of inputs to suggest that breathing probably has lots of impact on various tasks requiring memory. So time and again we see either uninostril breathing, combination of them have been studied to look at how it can influence various tasks requiring memory. So there are several other tasks, like one study looking at immediate effect of nostril breathing on memory performance, while another task looking at immediate effect of right and left nostril breathing, once again looking at verbal and spatial memory tasks, particularly looking in different groups. It can be different age groups, gender like in male and female. For example, these 3 studies what I am talking, they have looked at children, they have looked at middle aged, and they have also looked at elderly population. The common result is that it can significantly improve your spatial memory scores when you compare it with verbal memory scores. One probable reason is that we are all so trained through our education system that our left hemisphere has to be improved. Logical brain is given a lot of importance, and hence we neglect the right hemisphere or the artistic part of the brain. And it is consistent to see that several of these studies demonstrated that the right hemisphere function can be improved and optimized. So a couple of other techniques which have also been tried, which involves focused attention, something like Trataka, which is a Kriya where you are supposed to bring your complete awareness and attention on a candle or any specific object, also has been shown to improve the dimensions of memory, which includes attention, concentration, etc., and showing that improves your working memory, spatial memory, and of course attention. Also look at relaxation as ingredient of all yoga practices, but relaxation or meditation have also been studied separately. We know it, if you are relaxed well, you can remember certain things better. So many times it happens to us. Somebody comes and asks you, do you know where I have kept that? Then you say that you should be knowing how I will remember. No, both of us were together. Do you remember? I am not able to remember. So then you take a minute and then you take a breath. You just think about it. Suddenly a flash comes. So relaxing your mind has been shown to be an amazing to recollect whatever you want to bring out, and also not just always recollecting information from whatever has been stored for long, but also in the case of quick memory like short-term memory. There was another study looked at how you can influence even the short-term memory, the quick recollection after various interventions, particularly looking at individuals practicing it for as long as 12 weeks period and demonstrating that it can certainly improve short-term memory as well. So having said that, various studies have looked at types of memory, techniques of yoga, and also its impact on either a group of tasks or individual tasks. So we have enough evidence to suggest that selectively we can work on and improve various dimensions of memory. In one another study, it was also looked at Hatha Yoga based intervention, because we always look at when you want to really improve memory, you look at breathing, meditation, relaxation, etc. So then, is there a role for asanas? Is there a role for physical activity to improve memory? Certainly yes. This study also demonstrated that they looked at the effects of 8 weeks of Hatha Yoga intervention on executive function in older adults, because we know memory is one task, one entity which gets affected in the elderly significantly. Also, it is connected with various degenerative processes taking place in the brain. So if this is true, then we have a very big application that we can help elderly people. We know yoga works. If you ask me how, then I have a combination of reasons to explain. So number one, we have clear evidence to suggest that various brain areas which regulate memory have also been influenced through these yoga practices. One particular part which is a bigger member of your limbic system is the hippocampus, and a study demonstrated hippocampal volume can be significantly increased by the practice of yoga. There are other areas like temporal lobe, frontal lobe, and parietal lobe, each one of them contributing to this enhanced activity. So this particular study also looked at how various areas of the brain can be understood when you give yoga and its impact on these different parts of the brain, and how gray matter volume in the brain can also be looked upon as probable clue for as an underlying mechanism for showing improvement in memory. So there was a greater activation in left hippocampus and less activation in dorsolateral prefrontal cortex when an individual was performing an encoding phase of a Sternberg task. So these are those tasks which require executive functions and also specifically looking at working memory. And these also demonstrated that the controls who are not given yoga versus those who were given yoga had differential impact on these specific areas of the brain, particularly looking at the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and also the areas within the limbic system. We have seen that various areas can be involved. If I want to summarize, I will use this particular slide. Like you have these 4 lobes contributing significantly, like your frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, and occipital lobe, and of course along with that the brainstem and cerebellum. So brainstem is the place where all the information comes to your brain apart from what comes from other sensory organs. If you have a regulatory mechanism, the filtering mechanism, then probably the disturbing or those distracting influences can be regulated well, autonomic functions can be regulated well, and which contributes to better performance in memory. While frontal lobe, as we have seen, it involves in various higher brain functions like attentional processes, looking at executive functions including planning, etc. Learning can be facilitated when you practice yoga, and hence it can have an impact on your memory. Similarly, the parietal lobe, which processes sensations, how you feel, allowing you to tune into your body and to listen to various inputs coming from the external sources, including what you receive inputs from a yoga teacher when you are practicing yoga. but most important, temporal lobe allows you to process that information. Particularly when you are practicing yoga, each of these lobes are facilitating you to bring in that homeostasis, and of course the occipital lobe. When you bring all this information together, you will understand very clearly that it is not just the tradition of yoga which is described as something very useful, but the science behind yoga, science behind different practices of yoga, which says very clearly that you can use them to improve memory, you can use them to improve various dimensions of memory, not just in general, and we have a long way to go to actually use very specifically the individual practices for different age groups, different requirements, also in different clinical conditions. Thank you very much.